Good afternoon and welcome to Mary Ann Folchert, legislative candidate from District 31. Thank you, Mary Ann, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today is State President Susan DeCamp and advocacy lead volunteers Joyce Beck, Bob Lassen, and Mike Barwig. We appreciate your taking the time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in Nebraska. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. If you would like to start us off by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign, and we're thinking 5 minutes or less for time reference, that would be great. And once we've completed your opening, Mary Ann, we'll move into the question section. So thank you for joining us, and I'll pass it back to you.
Sure. So my name is Mary Ann, and I'm a lifelong Nebraskan, grew up here in Omaha, and I'm a former public school teacher and a mother of 3, and also guardian to my older brother who has intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so when my kids were born, I transitioned to being at home with them and also assisting with my brother. So caregiving has been my gig for the last many years. And of course, now my parents are getting older as well, and they are here in Omaha. So I am part of that generation that's sort of sandwiched between taking care of their own our own children as well as our parents and other loved ones too. And I decided to run for office because I was frustrated with the last session. I felt like the session really kind of got derailed by some very narrow, very divisive issues that really didn't apply broadly to Nebraskans. And so that was a concern to me. And I just wanted to be able to put myself out there as an option for people just wanting, reasonable, good, sound policy that makes life better for Nebraskans. That's where I feel like the focus should be.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary Ann, and thank you for taking the time to run because I know it's an intensive process. So we appreciate that and your leadership in that area. We'll just move into the question section. And again, we provided you with a set of 3 questions pertaining to the 50-plus in Nebraska. Again, trying to allot about 5 minutes for each question. And again, they are very jam-packed and lots of question and information in there. So do your best, and whatever you feel you need to offer on each of these, we'd be grateful for that. So our first question is on health, caregiving, and home and community-based care. And Joyce Beck is actually going to take that question. So I'll pass it to you, Joyce.
Thank you, Mary Ann, for giving us some of your time. I know you're busy campaigning and going door to door, so I appreciate you stopping long enough to discuss this with us. 84% of Nebraskans over 45 say staying in their homes as they get older is extremely important to them. Home and community-based services and area agencies on aging become important assets to caregivers as they care for loved ones. Home care not only meets the needs of their loved ones, but it also provides relief to an already strained long-term care industry. So I have 2 questions for you, Mary Ann. The first one is, what would you do to protect and/or expand the home and community-based programs, particularly recruitment and retention of a significant workforce and adequate funding for the programs and services that older Nebraskans and their families rely on? And the second question is, what will you do to support the 179,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska?
Well, being a caregiver myself, this certainly hits home with me, especially as we have been recently looking for options for my folks, as well as my brother who recently moved into assisted living. So I do think with so many people wanting to age in their homes, we do need to shift so that we can allow them to do that. And that does require expanding funding, making sure that we have adequate funding sources for that. And as far as expanding also credits for home caregivers who are providing those services, since there are many folks who are just obviously doing that unpaid and without any sort of support. And if it's alleviating some of the burden from institutional settings, then, you know, we need to, I think, incentivize folks and support them as they are taking some of that burden on. So expanding those credits for people, making sure that we have home-based services that can come in, and transportation too is an area that is particularly frustrating for, I know, for my brother, because he does not drive and we don't have bus service in West Omaha. So those are some areas that I would want to make sure that we continue to have funding for. And another big one, and we'll see what happens on the ballot, but paid family leave would also really assist folks who are providing caregiving services so that they don't have to worry about losing their jobs or that sort of thing in order to care for a loved one, or leave the workforce altogether.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce, for the question, and thank you, Mary Ann, for your answer on that. And thank you for being a caregiver. Again, a lot of people haven't experienced that and the stresses that go along with that, as well as being a sandwich generation caregiver. You truly have walked it all, and we appreciate your background on that. And I know you've referenced the tax credit. AARP actually was the one that brought the caregiver tax credit, LB 937, this past session, and we were thrilled that it was passed. And so thank you for recognizing the importance of that. And as we move forward, those additional supports that go along with that. So moving on, then question number 2 comes from Susan DeCamp, and it addresses consumer fraud, exploitation, and protection. So Susan, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mary Ann. Nice to have you with us here.
Thank
So
you.
scammers are increasingly targeting older adults with scams such as wire transfer, those gift card scams. I'm sure you've heard about the grandparent scam. And then schemes also involving real property are popping up too. Nationwide, the average victim of elder fraud lost nearly $34,000 due to these crimes in 2023. And in Nebraska, the FTC showed that there were 4,643 fraud reports made. Nearly 9 in 10 consumers agree that lawmakers need to do more to protect consumers from fraud and scams. So with that in mind, our question for you is, and it's a lengthy one, so bear with me here. Consumers lose billions of dollars each year to online, financial, property, and other types of fraud. What will you do to address and ensure that Nebraskans are protected against fraud and deceptive or unfair business practices, and provide opportunities for redress to victims or fraud? Would you support enacting laws to require merchants that sell gift cards to post notice about fraud? Or enactment of a consumer fraud restitution fund, or implementation of preventative measures to assist in combating owner, seller, housing impersonation fraud?
I do support those measures, and also agree that more needs to be done with how easy it is online now to deceive people. And just even my own parents will just, they'll get an email and it has a business name at the top and it looks legitimate. The logo is there and everything else. They click on it and, you know, they're down a rabbit hole there. So it's just too easy, and there does need to be tighter, I think, regulations as far as whatever we can do to prevent that. And the fund, I would support that consumer fraud restitution fund to help folks who have been victimized. I would support all 3 of those measures that you specifically described.
Great. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And again, when you have a parent that's been part of this, that's the boots on the ground, you understand that concept and how critical important it is to stop it. So thank you for your support on that. Our last question, we're going to move over more into the housing and livable communities concept. Bob Lassen's going to ask that question, but it's on helping people stay in their homes and communities. So Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. AARP's goal as a company is to allow people to age in place and stay in the lowest level of care and cost as long as possible. To that end, we want to address a couple things today. One of them is zoning, and the other one is the taxes. Zoning obstacles allow just single-family resident homes. In these communities, zoning does not include other housing types, such as accessory dwelling units, ADUs, manufactured homes, intergenerational duplexes, or apartment buildings that may be better options for people as they're trying to downsize. The other part of the question that we're going to talk about is property tax, and this is the most burdensome tax for many homeowners, but it's particularly difficult for low incomes and the elderly. And then we'll talk a little bit about homestead exemptions too. So get to the question. Nebraskans over 65 are the fastest growing segment of our population, and research shows that most want to remain in their homes and communities as they age. As housing costs continue to increase, older adults are unable to find housing to meet their needs when seeking to downsize, and thus are being pushed out of communities and homes that they've lived in for generations. What will you do to support, incentivize, and ensure the creation of affordable and diverse housing options, such as accessory dwelling units, intergenerational housing, manufactured housing units, or townhomes? And the second part of the question, will you fight to ensure that the homestead exemption program is maintained and protected to ensure that older Nebraskans that qualify continue to have access to the tax relief program that allows them to age in place?
Yes, let's start with the second part first, since you just finished that. Yes, I do support protecting the homestead exemption, even expanding it for eligible folks if that is as a possibility as well. I know that's a big concern out here in my area for folks. They want to be able to stay in their homes, and especially when you're in a home that maybe you bought 30 years ago, and now the neighborhood around you has been built up, and you're getting priced out of your home there. So, so I do support the homestead exemption program and possibly expanding that to even include more folks under that protection. And as far as the first question, which dealt with the different types of housing, I think this could be a really interesting approach to solving not only the housing availability for seniors and folks, but also if the zoning is changed to allow for multi-generational families or some of these other things like, a separate home, on the same property or little home, that kind of thing. That can help with that can help families with childcare too, because they have, multiple generations in the same home. So mom and dad can stay in the home and maybe they would be assisting with children, things like that. So I think it would be interesting to look at changing some of the zoning requirements and maybe opening that up to some of those other options that you have listed, the diverse options, so that more folks can stay in their homes, but also so that families feel like, and this was a challenge for my brother, he loved to be independent, living in his own apartment, but after he had a kidney transplant, he just wasn't able to care for himself in the same way. We didn't have the ability to take him in. I mean, I do a lot as far as caregiving, but he did not actually live with us. And we couldn't take him in to our home and take on the medical stuff and his medications and all that. And so we just this summer were having to find housing option for him. And I just worried all the time that he wasn't when he was on his own? Is he taking his medication? And he's not very good about communicating when he's not well. So it was a relief to us to know that he was somewhere where those things were kind of in place, so we don't have to worry about that. And I know a lot of people would feel better if they had were able to bring their family member either into their home or an adjacent dwelling or something like that, to where they could have that sense of security, and the family member can also have that sense of independence.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And I will bring to your attention, and maybe you're aware, there were a couple of bills in the legislature this last session, 1165 and 1166, that addressed the accessory dwelling units and the duplexes that Senator Lowe had. Unfortunately, didn't get out of Urban Affairs, but Senator Armendariz now has taken an interim study on that and planning a hearing in the first Friday in October, with hopes and plans that there's some kind of compromise bringing it forward with the cities and municipalities, mainly on not removing local control, but finding an incentive for them to find different ways to allow these types of zoning. AARP also, you probably are aware, has been working with the city of Omaha, and accessory dwelling units are really starting to get a lot of attraction and traction in the city of Omaha. So I think, based on the conversation that we've had, you understand the concept and that criticalness of finding ways for people to live intergenerationally in very creative and different ways. So appreciate your support of that as well. So in closing, as we come to the end of our meeting, I would like to take a few minutes or give a few minutes back to you if you want to talk about what your priorities might be for serving in the legislature, or if there are any specific issues that you're planning to work on or address during your time as a state senator, and any closing comments. So I'll give it back to you, Mary Ann.
Sure. Well, as a former public school teacher, and again with my brother with disabilities, public education is a real focus and priority for me. And also wanting to focus on access to healthcare, and including things like we talked about, paid family leave or elder care, in-home care, and mental health care. One thing that I've discussed when I was meeting with some doctors was also just access. Do we have enough providers as we have an aging population? Do we have enough neurologists? Do we have enough, specialized providers? And how can we bring those people to our state or keep those people in our state? I'm also concerned, very concerned as a mom, about public safety, and specifically common sense gun measures and regulations. I have school-age children. My husband is a school teacher. That is something that is very concerning to me. And also just workforce development, bringing people, recruiting talent into our state, keeping our young people here, especially as our population ages. We want to make sure that that our kids and grandkids that this is the kind of place where they want to live and raise their families too, just like we chose to do. And so anything, accessible childcare, affordable childcare, diverse housing, lots of different options for housing, and just looking at licensure and things of that nature to make it easier for people who are coming to Nebraska or moving into Nebraska, say military families, for example, making it easier for them to practice in the state. So that's a lot, I guess.
Yeah.
Love your
You'll
aspirations.
be busy.
But love all you. I mean, those are the critical issues, and those are at the heart of, obviously, of some of the issues we need to resolve, especially as our population ages. So we certainly appreciate your taking the time. I know you're really busy on the campaign trail, but thank you for visiting with us today. We do wish you the best with your campaign, and thank you again for meeting with AARP today. Take care.
Yes, and
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Take care.
Bye.